Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from Taiwan. I'm Tiffany Wong. July 1st marks the 27th anniversary of Hong Kong's handover from the UK to China. But what does that mean for Hong Kong society today? To discuss this, we're joined by Terrence Law, a Hong Kong activist in exile now living in Taiwan. Terrence, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you.
Let's first zoom in. Can you describe what kind of activities would happen on the anniversary of the handover in Hong Kong?
Usually after the handover in 1997, we got a rally, a demonstration on the Hong Kong island. Actually, after I'm 12 years old, my parents always took me into the rally every year. However, this kind of rally already disappeared because of the NSL and the highly oppression by the Hong Kong government. So it's so sad that as a Hong Konger, I cannot participate in it anymore.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what you've been hearing from Hong Kongers still living in Hong Kong? Leading up to the handover anniversary, are they planning any kind of demonstration, or what is the feeling like for them?
I would say after national security law and Article 23, local Hong Kongers already feel some kind of nostalgia, actually. Like their Hong Kong experience before the 2019 is already gone. But they can do nothing to finding back this Hong Kong up before 2019. So the nostalgia of them is very ridiculous because they are still living in Hong Kong. But that kind of feeling is, I think, inevitable.
Now, you were born after the handover happened, so you've always been living under Chinese Hong Kong. Now, have you noticed any generational differences when you speak with older people?
The generation gap is bigger than all of us imagined. Usually, the elder generation, the elderly, usually they still believed in the one country, two system. But like the younger generation, especially our generations, or we call it a localist generation, we usually don't believe in the one country, two system anymore, and that's also my fault.
So you mentioned one country, two systems, which is this idea that Hong Kong was promised political and economic autonomy from China within the 50 years following the handover. Has China followed through with that? What does that look like now?
Actually, I think all of us noticed that the promises given by the Chinese government are already broken. They broke their promises already. Hong Kongers, they originally promised us that the one country, two system can let Hong Kongers rule Hong Kong. However, we cannot elect our own president or legislator. And we have no more freedom of speech, freedom of rallies, etc., and publish. And furthermore, our economies got worse and worse because of the China's governing. The whole international society didn't believe Hong Kong as an autonomous city. Therefore, the economic status is getting lower and lower of Hong Kong. So the China government, all of the promises given by the Chinese government are all broken.
So Beijing imposed a national security law in 2020 to stifle those anti-extradition protests in Hong Kong, and they've recently expanded that law in something known as Article 23. What is that, and could you tell us what it means for Hong Kong society?
So Article 23 was a new legal weapon that legislated by the Hong Kong government. That Article 23 they expand the power of Hong Kong government. They can sanction more and more Hong Kong citizens, even though if you flee into exile in foreign country. I think Article 23 create a white terror, even more terrible than the national security law. A lot of Hong Kong citizens that still live in local Hong Kong, they tell me that because of Article 23, they cancel the subscription, the Patreon subscription for those foreign political organizations because they're afraid that this would become a evidence for their crime evidence.
And so now is the Hong Kong government basically equal to the Chinese government?
Yeah, I would say yes.
So how have these crackdowns affected the Hong Kongers? Are people leaving Hong Kong now?
Yeah, due to the freedom of speech, due to the environment nowadays in Hong Kong, a lot of Hong Kongers are fleeing into exile out of Hong Kong. For example, nowadays in Taiwan, already 50,000 people coming to immigrants in Taiwan. And a lot of us, like younger generation, they are fleeing into exile. for me is an example because I participated in the civil society work in Hong Kong after 2019. I participated in the student union, student movement. Some police officer came to my house and arrested me, and I have to flee into exile. These kind of situations happens nowadays in Hong Kong.
In the past decade, there were the 2014 umbrella movement as well as the 2019 anti-extradition protests in Hong Kong. Could you tell us more about how Hong Kong society has evolved?
Especially on the 2019 anti-extradition bill movement, the whole Hong Kong society has been mobilized, come into on the street. Because of this mobilization, the Hong Kong government feel the anxiety. They can no longer rule the Hong Kong society peacefully, so they decided to use very brutal police force to fight against this civil society's movement. And because of that, I would say the whole civil society of Hong Kong already died. A lot of political parties being dissolved, even student union, like my student union, Chinese University Student Union, are being dissolved because of the repression given by the Hong Kong government. Due to the repression and the oppression, the whole civil society is already dead. And even though those are not dead yet, they flee into exile because of the government.
You said that Hong Kong civil society is dead. So does it exist anywhere else outside of Hong Kong?
Even though the original local civil society of Hong Kong is dead, but it's also alive in a subtle way. The political industry is dead, for sure, but like the cultural industry is still alive and getting more and more and developing very well. It would become a very important base of future democratic movement of Hong Kong. And of course, exile or diaspora democratic movement are still going on, for example, myself as an example.
Now let's zoom out to Taiwan. Taiwan has been another target of China's aggression as it seeks to stifle supporters of Taiwan independence and sovereignty. So as a Hong Konger living in Taiwan, what do you think of Taiwan's situation?
I would say after 2019, Hong Kong already become a very good demonstration and example for Taiwan people, knowing that the Chinese government are unreliable. Because like all of the promises given by the Chinese government are already broken. So I would say no matter what party you believe in, what party you joined, you participated in, the consensus of Taiwanese people is that Chinese government, all of the promises of Chinese government are unreliable. So even though you are believed in, for example, KMT or whatever, those kind of a more pro-China's party, I would say that their views towards China has already changed because of Hong Kong.
In June, China threatened to give the death penalty to die-hard Taiwan independence leaders. This caused Taiwan's government to raise its travel warning for China, but also Hong Kong and Macau. Now, Hong Kong's government has said that this is smearing its national security law. Do you think that there's really a worry for Taiwanese trying to travel to these places?
Yeah, I think definitely. The new bill of anti-spy bill, I think, in China is already would be occur in 1st of July, I think. So the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government have the right, have the power to search your phone, to search your different electronic devices. So this will become a very dangerous travel if you go to like Hong Kong or China, even if you're not an activist or not an active leader in political movement.
Do you think China would really follow through with these punishments, including the death penalty?
I think China government would do that if they have you, if they really arrested those kind of leaders.
Now, Taiwan isn't under the same one country, two systems rule that Hong Kong is promised, but it's been able to exist as an independent country. How else do you think Taiwan's situation is different from Hong Kong's, and how can Taiwan protect its democratic values?
Because of the de facto independent status of Taiwan, I think Taiwan at least have the opportunity to strengthen their own like national security or economic security, and it will become a very good weapon towards China's invasion in the future. So I do think that, for example, the national security, the economic security, etc., this kind of legal weapon have to strengthen For example, that the censorship of Chinese capital, if Chinese capital want to come into Taiwan, the censorship of that need to be strengthened. That kind of opportunity is very important for Taiwan. Otherwise, it would become like Hong Kong, because Hong Kong have no such right or power to do the censorship that allow Chinese capital to get into Hong Kong or not. So the whole Hong Kong society become infiltrated very heavily.
Now, as a Hong Konger living in Taiwan, both places being under threat from China, do you feel a sense of camaraderie with Taiwanese people, or how do you feel that Hong Kongers are perceived in Taiwan?
Actually, I think over the past 100 years, Hong Kongers and Taiwanese are always allies. For example, in the White Terror period in Taiwan, a lot of activists would flee into exile into Hong Kong before they go to other countries for safety. So, but nowadays the things got really interesting that Hong Kong people flee into exile into Taiwan. So I have always felt that kind of sense of comrade of Taiwanese people, because like we're fighting for democracy. Even though 100 years ago we are fighting against different enemies, but we are also fighting against for the same values. So this kind of sense of allies or comrades are always exist in Taiwan daily living. I have found a very strong Hong Kong community in Taiwan here, and I have always felt that the Taiwanese community are very inclusive. So this kind of like show a very good welcome to Hong Kong communities. I've always thankful about that.
With a lot of Hong Kongers seeking asylum or seeking to move to Taiwan, is there anything you think Taiwan can do better to help Hong Kongers and stand with Hong Kong?
I think the Taiwan government should definitely prepare for the refugee law that are upcoming. A lot of civil organizations recently opened a press con that call for Taiwan's government to legislate such bill. And I think such bill or such law would definitely help Hong Kong's people, especially those in Egypt.
Many of the protest movements in Hong Kong were led by student leaders like yourself. And now you're a student in Taiwan. Do you see that same level of political participation in young Taiwanese youth?
I don't feel the same level compared to Hong Kong youth and Taiwan's youth. I was always say that the Hong Kong youth, especially in 2019, highly mobilized it. But the reason of that is very clear, that because 2019 is the last fight of Hong Kong. But when we're speaking into like Taiwan's society, of course that is not the last fight. For example, the Bluebird operation recently, a lot of youth being mobilized, a lot of youngsters being mobilized, go on the street. However, they know that, or all of us know that, even though the bill is already passed, but this is not the last fight. The fight is still going on in the court, or the fight is still going on the street. So in the future, so even though the Bluebird operation mobilized a lot of Taiwan youth, but they still have a lot of youngsters still know that this is not the last fight, so they didn't participate in it. But if the situation getting worse, I think a lot of young generations would come on the street.
So it's that sense of urgency in Hong Kong, but not in Taiwan.
Yeah, definitely.
So now you've been here in Taiwan for 2 years. Do you have any hope of going back to Hong Kong in the future?
Yeah, I do got such hope. Even though my hair is white, or even though I have a lot of children, I think if I got the opportunity, I would definitely go back to Hong Kong. If the day it's like 50 years after, I'm still fighting for it. Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Terrence. It was great to have you on our show.
Thank you, Tiffany.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. For more stories from TaiwanPlus News, you can follow us on our social media. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.